series IC814. We were earlier talking about how Netflix representatives have been summoned by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now we're learning that they have in fact arrived for meeting with two members of Netflix who will be now meeting the Secretary of Information and Broadcasting Ministry. My colleague Pallavi has all the details about that particular meeting. Pallavi, anything that you're picking up from this meeting that is coming out? Two members of Netflix who have already arrived at the ministry?
There are two representatives of Netflix, and that is Monica Shergill, who is the head of Netflix India, is very much there, a part of this meeting, which is taking place at Sanjay Jaju's room. He's the secretary of the INB ministry, and the meeting is scheduled for 10:30 a.m., should last roughly around an hour. Essentially, 2 points on the agenda. One, what is seen as scenes which seems to depict the hijackers in a sympathetic light, to make them look across as being extremely human, and also in stark contrast to that, the negotiators to ensure that the hijackers deboard the plane, they were made to look as a very weak-kneed and weak. That is one objection. There has been some objection also raised by the use of words like Shankar and Bhola for the hijackers. But if you go by the 2000 MEA clarification, it was very clear that these were code names and the passengers were aware of it, the negotiators were aware of it. But this has now also snowballed into a huge political issue with the BJP stepping in. Kangana Ranaut's movie Emergency, which is not seeing the light of the day because it hasn't got that clarification certification. She also raised the point that why do you have double standards? So what is it that a Netflix people will be asked to clarify and asked to do? Well, over here, one, come out with a clarification on why those scenes were inserted. Second, they are the OTT platforms. How do they give the go-ahead to Anubhav Sinha to release this IC814? And third and most important, of course, is there is a possibility that some of these scenes or these lines may be asked to be deleted and then re-released on the OTT platform Netflix.
Right, Pallavi, so why summon just the Netflix reps in this particular case? Why not the director of the series or the makers of the series for that matter, considering the centre has taken that note of the public outcry? Is it to do with the centre's response on just that, or there is more to it?
Well, we did ask the INB ministry sources a question on why hasn't Anubhav Sinha been summoned. They said, look, the buck starts and stops really with the OTT platform. They are supposed to be the filtering process. They are the ones who should actually go through the nitty-gritty and decide whether a particular series or a film should be released on the OTT platform. If you're going to give them a platform, how can you completely blame the director? The possibility of the director being called in at some point of time cannot be ruled out. But I think a lot will depend at today's meeting. If the Netflix representatives agree to delete some of the portions and dialogues from the series, then I think the matter ends over here. But if they refuse to do so, and remember at 3 p.m. is supposed to be the press conference of Anubhav Sinha and his entire team, it would be interesting to hear what he has to say, what is going to be his defense. Of course, for now, the Netflix's defense is that they are going by the versions which is done, written on the book on which it is based. And second, the MEA's own statement that code words like Shankar, Bhola, Burger and Doctor were used. So it's not that we were making up facts. So we'll have to wait to see what really happens after the meeting if any word comes out.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Pallavi. And let's now take a look at there has been how, in fact, one of the passengers of IC814 spoken exclusively to CNN News 18's Zaka Jacob. That would be interesting to hear that narrative coming in from the horse's mouth. Remember, this person was very much there, present in that very flight when the hijack really took place. Let's listen in.
So let me ask Mr. Sanjeev Sharma. He was one of the passengers on board IC814 amongst the 174 who were on board when this hijacking happened. He lived through the entire 8 days of the hijacking, went all the way to Kandahar, and then of course in this deal where 3 terrorists were released, and finally after 8 days these 174 passengers were released. I want to ask you and start off by asking you, Mr. Sharma, describe for us what happened on board that ill-fated flight IC814 back in December of 1999. What do you remember about the hijackers, and what do you make of this entire controversy around the names of 2 of the hijackers, the pseudonyms that are being used, Bhola and Shankar? Is that accurate to what happened on board IC814?
See, I've seen the series, in fact, and yes, it's quite accurate. Barring what was happening outside, we obviously didn't know. So it very well corresponds with the book which Captain Devi Sharan has written. And I also wrote a book, and it was published by Macmillan, Terror on Board. So if you go through that, you'll see that this is exactly what happened. And there are lot of things which have been missed out. But yes, one thing for sure is that the names that they have been given in the series, they are correct. They are Chief, Burger, Doctor, Bhola, Shankar, and Chief was the brother of the terrorist who was released, Maulana Masood Asad. Burger was a Harvard-educated, very well-spoken person. Doctor was more of a cleric. He would tell us about Islam and, that when we go out and, what all we have to tell the world about Allah and, praise Allah, etc. Shankar was the youngest of them all. He was a very ruthless, murderer. He's the one who slit Rupin Katyal's throat and stabbed Satnam Singh.
Okay.
And he was one person who was always alert and I never saw him sleeping in those 8 days. So yeah, the names, as far as the names go, the names are correct. And I don't think Netflix has done anything out of the ordinary or wrong by mentioning the names as Shankar and Bhola, because those were the code names. They were mentally brutal, though physically initially when they hijacked, they asked everybody to keep their heads down, etc. And there were some South Indians on the plane who didn't understand, Hindi. So they bashed those guys up. And and my brother-in-law was also there on the flight with me. He was highly diabetic, whom they let out in Kandahar and, let him go. That was a humanitarian, gesture, because I was with him at night when he was literally coughing up blood, and they said, "Aapne Sanjeev bhai, aapne pehle kyun nahi bataya? Ye hum apne sar pe nahi lenge." Then he burst out at them and he says, "Kya sar pe nahi bataya? Aapne itni dehshat philai hui thi." And I said, "My God, this is the end, because these guys are absolutely ruthless." They were kind of, brainwashed, ruthless, absolutely, who didn't realize others' pain. And there was an incident when he cut his, toe on the glass, because a lot of glass was scattered around the plane. So he was squealing in agony. And that's when I thought to myself, I said, "Look what you have done." While we were exiting the plane on the release on the 31st, this fellow Burger, he was standing in the alley and he was crying inconsolably. And I asked him, I said, "What happened?" He says, "मैंने बहुत गलत किया है. मैंने अच्छा नहीं किया आप लोगों के साथ." I told him, I said, "अब जो हो गया भाई, वो तो अब उसका तो कुछ नहीं कर सकते, पर अब यहाँ से जाके गायब हो जाओ और ऐसे कभी नहीं करो. Don't do these things ever again. If you want to prove a point to the world, this is not the way to do it. You're supposed